Are you going to be fighting at the White House?
So I am in negotiations with the Ultimate Fighting Championship about the bout. Either the White House or there or thereabouts. Sometime in the summer, McGregor will return.
I will have more information for you guys. Actually, no. This week I should announce the White House fight. This week I should be announcing it.
This UFC card that's going to take place on the White House lawn. How do you decide the headliner?
John Jones has made it clear I want to do this, and he sent me a text apologizing and all that stuff, but I need people that I can seriously rely on for this one. People talk shit about Conor. Conor is a guy that literally will fight anybody.
But does he care enough to actually make a fight right now?
He and I have been talking nonstop, and he's like, I'm dead serious. I want this. So we'll see.
What once sounded impossible, almost laughable in the brutal theater of combat sports is suddenly building real, undeniable momentum. The whispers are no longer quiet. As the idea of a potential White House fight card continues to shake the foundations of the fight world, a name has now stepped into the spotlight, one powerful enough to turn rumor into reality. Conor McGregor. The mere thought of McGregor entering talks to compete on what could become the most politically charged fight card in the entire history of combat sports sends a shockwave through fans, fighters, and promoters alike. This isn't the usual comeback chatter that fades away after a few headlines. This feels different. Something bigger is forming behind the scenes, something calculated, something explosive. Because if Conor McGregor truly walks onto a stage built inside the walls of American power, the spectacle won't just be another fight night, it will be a collision between politics, fame, and violence unlike anything the sport has ever witnessed. And that possibility alone is enough to make the entire MMA world stop, stare, and wonder what exactly is about to unfold next.
Damn. Did you see the rumors of the Conor McGregor versus
not Prates.
Carlos Prates?
Yeah. That's going to be heavy rumors. I know Conor tweeted. He tweeted too. It's a no-namer next. But dude,
I don't think he want that.
Hell no.
Send the contract.
I would have been so fired up if that was true. I would have been.
Why?
Because it's like, okay, Conor taking a fight like that means he's actually coming back. Or because if he's not, he's getting his ass
for what?
beat.
To get his ass beat?
Yeah, well, either one. But you tell me right now, if Conor came back serious and then went and knocked out Prates, people would freak the fuck out.
Not happening.
Yeah, I know it's not happening, but people would.
Even the champions are starting to admit what once sounded impossible. The conversation has shifted, and the fighters themselves can feel the gravity of what may be coming. In fact, Alexander Volkanovski has openly suggested that if the UFC actually pushes forward with this rumored White House megacard, the usual rules of matchmaking might suddenly stop mattering. Because when an event grows to this level of spectacle, logic often takes a back seat to something far more powerful. According to Volkanovski, leaving Conor McGregor out of the main event would be almost unthinkable, nearly impossible to justify when the entire world would be watching. And that statement alone reveals just how massive this potential event is becoming behind the scenes. This isn't simply another title defense or a routine pay-per-view built around rankings and divisions. The scale of it all has already begun bending the usual structure of the sport. When a fight card carries this much global attention, the conversation stops being about who deserves the shot or which belt is on the line. Instead, everything shifts toward spectacle, legacy, and the brightest star capable of commanding the moment. And in a night designed to make history, to dominate headlines across sports and politics alike, the focus naturally turns to the one name powerful enough to eclipse every other storyline. Because on a stage this enormous, it's not just about competition anymore, it's about star power, presence, and the biggest name in the sport standing at the center of a moment that could permanently reshape the narrative of MMA.
If, say, Conor is on the card, he's not going to be fighting for a title.
Nope.
Do they make him a headline still? Like, is he going to be the biggest pull, or what? How does that work?
I mean, you can't have Conor McGregor not headline. It wouldn't make sense.
Do you think they do that? But
I think they would.
Title.
I think they would. I think they'll have title. It's a White House card. I think this is much bigger than, you know what I mean? I think a few of your standard things that goes out the window for this type of event. So I think they would. Obviously, you could have a Gaethje, and if Conor's not on there, you probably got them headlining. There's whispers of that being the headline.
Pereira Jones or
who's the headline?
Aspinall.
Aspinall won't be ready in time. Pereira moving up to heavyweight. There's been talks of it. Is that headline?
He's been hinting. Jumping on the scale as he's heavy as.
Yeah, he's hinting at it. And there's a lot of talks about it.
For a night that could rewrite the very rules of spectacle, the promotion may be willing to bend parts of its original blueprint just to ensure that its biggest star remains under the brightest light. But beneath the excitement, there are whispers that such a move would never come without hidden costs. A stage this massive demands calculated risks, and not everyone believes those risks are evenly shared. One rising contender has already hinted at what may be happening behind closed doors. Carlos Prates revealed that his name was quietly floated as a possible opponent point for Conor McGregor on the rumored White House supercard, a matchup that would instantly send shockwaves through the fight world. Yet almost as quickly as the idea surfaced, it vanished. According to Prates himself, the concept was dismissed before it could even gain traction, and his reasoning cut straight to the heart of the gamble. From his perspective, the risk-reward equation simply didn't favor McGregor. The scenario would place a global superstar, an icon whose legacy is already carved into the sport, into dangerous territory outside his natural weight class. Across from him would stand a hungry fighter riding a surge of momentum, a man with explosive knockout power and nothing to lose. In that kind of matchup, one clean strike could flip the entire narrative in seconds. For Prates, the logic was simple. The danger of derailing the biggest name in the sport outweighed the reward of the spectacle itself, and that realization may have quietly shut the door before the fight could ever be announced.
Pra mim, não chegou nada do UFC, tá ligado? Acredito que eles tenham me oferecido sim pro McGregor.
Eu passei até a informação que eu falei com uma pessoa bem informada que trabalha com você, que me disse isso também, que eles chegaram a escutar que ofereceram o seu nome ao McGregor, mas que oficialmente o UFC não ofereceu nada para vocês. Então é isso também, né? Você ficou sabendo que pelo menos pro lado de lá seu nome rolou, né?
Sim, aí ele deu uma peidada, correu.
Dá pra dizer que o Conor correu por quê, Carlão? Por que você acha que ele correu?
Porque eu sou embaçado, né, mano? Pô, o cara 5 anos parado aí e tal. Não é dessa categoria, embora as últimas lutas dele tenha feito no 7-7, mas não é um cara naturalmente de 7-7. Pô, eu venho aí no hype, nocauteando todo mundo. Então, eu acredito, se eu tivesse no lugar dele, eu também não aceitaria nem fodendo, mano. Acho que ele quer pegar, sei lá, mano. Ele deve pegar aí um ex-campeão, sabe? Alguma parada assim.
But the conversation didn't die there, not even close. The debate kept circling back until the matchup was suddenly brought up during a panel discussion with Tim Welch, and that's when the tone shifted from loose speculation to something far more intriguing. Welch made it clear that Carlos Prates isn't just another name floating in the rumor mill. According to him, the threat is very real. Prates carries serious danger, especially with the kind of explosive power that lives in his left hand, the kind that can change a fight in a single moment. But the danger doesn't stop there. Welch also pointed out that Prates brings a vicious Muay Thai arsenal into the cage, a style that has historically created uncomfortable nights for Conor McGregor. The combination alone raises eyebrows. And then there's everything else about him, the physical presence, the size advantage, the quiet confidence that borders on indifference. Prates doesn't carry himself like someone overwhelmed by the spotlight. In fact, he almost seems bored by it. That strange calm, that casual attitude, only adds to the intrigue surrounding the potential clash. Stories have even circulated about his laid-back habits during fight week, including the almost surreal image of him casually lighting cigarettes while the pressure builds around him. It paints a picture of a fighter who doesn't just accept chaos, he seems to thrive in it, and that unsettling composure might be the most dangerous weapon he brings to a fight that could explode the moment it begins.
Use your mind.
100%.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, Carlos Prates is a clean 6'2", southpaw, devastating with his left hand, devastating Muay Thai. Remember what Dustin did? Dustin kicked the stick right off him.
Yeah.
And Carlos is a different fucking ball game right now.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's big.
And he'd smoke a cigarette while doing it. And I would love dude. That fight, I know it's a big rumor, but it would be fun.
I thought that shit was a joke with him smoking. We fought in a Chicago card. I'll pull up to the hotel. He's just out there ripping those motherfuckers.
Even with the swelling hype and endless speculation, the reality behind the scenes remains frustratingly unclear. The logistics are anything but simple, and the path to making such a historic spectacle happen is tangled with complications. Oscar Willis pointed out that although Conor McGregor himself has openly hinted at negotiations and even referenced the idea of a White House fight card, turning that talk into an actual signed agreement is far more complicated than it sounds. According to Willis, the Ultimate Fighting Championship is almost certainly weighing several different scenarios behind closed doors, quietly testing multiple opponent combinations to find one that works both competitively and financially. Because when McGregor enters the equation, the numbers instantly change. A single McGregor fight has the potential to generate an estimated $25 million on its own, a staggering figure that no promotion in combat sports could ever casually dismiss. That kind of financial gravity pulls every decision into a much larger calculation. Willis doesn't completely rule out the possibility that the fight could materialize, but he also urges caution before believing the moment is guaranteed. The economics alone could complicate everything. Coordinating contracts, timing, venues, and broadcast expectations, especially for a rumored July 11th event, creates a mountain of challenges that may ultimately slow the entire operation down. And while fans around the world are hungry to witness McGregor's dramatic return on such a historic stage, the final decision may come down not to hype or demand, but to whether the numbers behind the spectacle can actually make sense.
Say in that interview, I'm in negotiations, and he did mention the White House, so at least in his mind, maybe this is still an option. I think it's probably still an option. As I said at the beginning of this, like they probably have 6 fights, right, that they're bouncing from one to the other until they can get a deal that they're satisfied with. I do believe, like Ariel's reported, they just want a gate, you know, like at this point with inflation, with everything, like you can probably get $25 million off a Conor fight, you know? And it's just, they're just never going to pass up $25 million, you know, they're not, so especially if they're already losing money on the event, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that July 11th card is probably where if they can come to a deal, he'll come back on. I don't know against who at this point, but like, yeah, I don't believe he'll be at the White House. But I'm very hopeful. I fucking would love him to come back, obviously. But I just think like the economics of it are too tough to make work for them.
And when the conversation shifts from logistics to actual matchups, Oscar Willis leans toward what would truly ignite both the fans and the spectacle surrounding the event. In his view, the clearest storyline practically writes itself. A trilogy clash between Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz would instantly capture attention, reviving one of the sport's most chaotic rivalries and delivering a narrative the audience already understands. For Willis, it's the kind of fight that sells itself the moment it's announced. But he doesn't stop there. He also imagines the promotion leaning into pure entertainment value, setting up high-energy battles where the stakes are less about titles and more about unforgettable moments. That could mean a wild BMF-style showdown with someone like Max Holloway or Charles Oliveira, matchups built on action, reputation, and the promise of fireworks rather than championship gold. In those scenarios, the belts might not matter at all, but the spectacle would be undeniable. Willis summed up his thinking bluntly, suggesting that at this stage of his career, McGregor might be best suited for fights designed purely for excitement. Still, there's another possibility lingering in the background. If the promotion truly wanted to honor McGregor's legacy as a rare multi-division champion, they could tempt him with something historic, a chance to pursue a third official world title. That kind of opportunity would carry enormous intrigue, though Willis quickly notes that while the BMF belt adds flair to a fight, it wouldn't count toward that particular piece of history.
I mean, at this point, I'm just all in on the Diaz trilogy. I think like it's just, I don't know, the Prates rumor sort of showed where their mentality might be at with booking Conor, but then the fact they moved on from that, maybe they didn't like the reaction they got for that fight or something like that. Maybe they just couldn't come to terms with Conor on that or whatever. But I want the Diaz trilogy, and failing that, I know Ariel said this as well, but it's the most logical thing. Just do the BMF, you know, him versus Max or Charles for the BMF. I think is like, I think that works. I think people would be okay with it. And I think it's like, what's the BMF if not just here's a fun one, you know? And I think at this point, Conor should just be in fun ones. And then I think you give Conor the incentive for being a 3 title holder. So especially like if, let's say they did John Alex and it's not for a belt, Conor would be the first opportunity to have 3 titles, right? And I imagine that's the sort of thing he would salivate.
Moreover, the mere idea of a White House fight card is already sending waves of attention across the globe, pulling fighters from every corner of the sport into the conversation. One of the latest voices to weigh in was Petr Yan, who acknowledged the rumors swirling around the event while addressing a particularly sensitive topic. Yan revealed that he had heard whispers suggesting Russian fighters might be left off the card entirely, a possibility that would instantly spark controversy, though he was careful to note that nothing official has been confirmed. Instead of fueling the tension, Yan framed the situation in a more optimistic light, suggesting that moments like this could actually show how combat sports have the power to rise above political divides. In his view, the cage has always been a place where nationality fades once the fight begins. And then, staying true to his blunt and confident personality, Yan took the idea even further with a half-serious, half-playful comment that quickly grabbed attention. He joked that if the event truly becomes the historic spectacle many are imagining, it shouldn't stop with Washington. According to him, the ambition could grow even bigger. First the fighters take the White House stage, and then the sport could host another massive event in Moscow's legendary Red Square. With remarks like that already circulating, it's clear that fighters themselves are beginning to picture the scale of the moment, imagining a global spectacle that pushes far beyond the usual limits of the sport.
But was told that Russian fighters couldn't fight on the White House card, to just be as blunt as possible. Have you heard the same?
Мераб сказал, что он предлагал такую тему, но если говорить открыто, то русским нельзя драться в Белом доме. Это правда, неправда? Ты такое слышал?
Я такого не слышал, но я считаю, что UFC — это международная организация, в которой выступают бойцы практически со всех стран, с разных стран мира. Я считаю, что это было бы, наоборот, отличным жестом показать, что спорт является вне политики.
I haven't heard a definite no regarding, Russian fighters, but I think that UFC is a huge international organization that probably fighters from all over the world are fighting in the UFC. So I think that if anything, this would be an incredible gesture, kind of like a gesture of goodwill to show that sport, after all, is outside of politics.
Okay, and you
Сначала,
go ahead.
Ариэль,
Yes.
сначала мы захватим Белый дом, а потом проведем огромный ивент на Красной площади. Ой-ой-ой.
And the goal is, first, we take the White House.
For a card
and
this
then
massive, readiness
we'll do a
becomes the
huge
ultimate
event.
currency, and Petr Yan is making it crystal clear that hesitation isn't part of his mindset. As the speculation around the historic event continues to swirl, Yan has stepped forward with a simple but powerful message: whoever the Ultimate Fighting Championship decides to place across from him, he'll be ready. No conditions, no delays, no second thoughts. According to Yan, the entire situation demands an all-in mentality, the kind where a fighter stays locked in for any challenge, anywhere and at any moment. That approach has become his trademark, and he's leaning into it now more than ever as the rumored card continues to build global intrigue. Even with chatter floating around about a possible clash with Sean O'Malley, Yan refuses to get tangled in the details of scheduling, negotiations, or previous plans. For him, those things belong to the business side of the sport. His responsibility is far simpler and far more dangerous: be prepared the instant the fight becomes official. In a moment where the spotlight could land on one of the biggest stages the sport has ever imagined, Yan seems determined to ensure that when the call finally comes, there will be no hesitation, no scrambling for preparation, only a fighter already waiting, already focused, and already ready to step forward the second the opportunity appears.
Obviously UFC is the type of company that decides this stuff. They listen to the fans, they really hear what the fans want. And I know they potentially promised a rematch to Merab, but really it's whoever, I'm ready for everybody. Whoever they put in front of me, I'm going to be ready. I'm ready to go. I know Sean O'Malley was talking about it as well, and he said that he wants to fight in the White House. So, that's one thing to say, but will he be ready if this gets announced? Will he all of a sudden not have enough time to prepare for me? I know he wanted to have a fight, but really, I just want to make sure that you know that it's anyone, anywhere.
While the world's attention remains locked on the rumored White House card, another bold vision is quietly forming thousands of miles away. Shera Magomedov, better known to fans as Shera Bullet, is already imagining a moment that could steal the spotlight entirely. Instead of Washington becoming the final destination for the sport's biggest spectacle, he believes the conversation could eventually shift toward Russia. In his mind, the idea is simple but enormous in scale: a major event staged in Moscow's iconic Red Square, a location so historic and visually striking that it could instantly command global attention. Such a stage wouldn't just rival the hype surrounding the White House card, it could transform the entire narrative of where the sport's biggest moments can happen. The vision itself carries a sense of ambition that feels almost cinematic. The octagon placed against one of the most recognizable landmarks on the planet, fighters walking out beneath the towering walls of the Kremlin as millions watch around the world. For Shera Bullet, it wouldn't simply be another fight night added to the schedule. It would represent something much bigger. An event like that would send a clear message that Russian MMA has arrived as a major force on the international stage, capable of hosting spectacles that rival anything the sport has ever produced. And if that vision somehow becomes reality, Moscow wouldn't just host a fight, it would instantly become the center of the global fight conversation.
Одна из больших желаний, намерений у меня вернуть турнир в Россию и уже, чтобы на этом турнире присутствовали все русские добрые мужики, весь Кавказ и весь мир, который за меня переживает, болеет. И такую международную встречу боев хочу. Все говорят о Белом доме, но мы постараемся сделать, чтобы все говорили о Красной площади, Moscow, Russia, Power.
On the other hand, Charles Sonnen exudes a quiet confidence, sensing that several critical pieces of the puzzle are already starting to lock into place. According to him, both Kobe Covington and Michael Chandler are likely to be featured on the card, and he is quick to emphasize that Chandler isn't being sidelined or punished in any way. The recent separation from Conor McGregor appears to stem from timing conflicts and contractual nuances rather than personal animosity, a subtle but important distinction that could shape the flow of matchups. Sonnen also delved into the fight potential itself, pointing out that a showdown between Max Holloway Holloway and Chandler could emerge as one of the most compelling bouts of the entire event. That matchup alone carries the kind of intrigue that elevates a card from exciting to must-see, blending high-level skill, contrasting styles, and the underlying narratives of timing and opportunity. For Sonnen, these details hint at a larger orchestration behind the scenes, a calculated effort to assemble not just fights, but stories, rivalries, and moments capable of capturing attention long before the first bell rings. And in a card already swelling with speculation and star power, the potential for a Max vs. Chandler clash adds a layer of anticipation that could define the narrative of the entire event, making the lineup feel sharper, more strategic, and ready to shock fans around the globe.
You got to look at your dates on this. Dana comes out on a Monday and calls that fight off. And on Tuesday, Conor comes out publicly and says that he's got a contractual dispute with the UFC and doesn't even think he's under contract. I mean, all of a sudden it starts to make sense. All of a sudden you start going, oh, okay. Right? I mean, this guy's getting his pants put on. Everybody forgets over time who's who. Is that what that's about? But if it is, I can just tell you per policy, Chandler would not be punished. So, okay. Ryan says you have to put Max on the card. I like the fight of Max versus...
When the conversation turns to nationality and the White House card, Charles Sonnen points out that history rarely prioritizes an American headlining a landmark event. Major UFC milestones, 100, 200, 300, have always celebrated the fights themselves, the moments that define the sport rather than the fighters' passports. But the White House setting shifts everything, introducing a layer of symbolism that the promotion could harness, the opportunity to feature an American in the spotlight without resorting to contrived matchmaking or forced storylines. Sonnen acknowledges the complexity of the decision, noting that while placing two Americans in the main event might appear to resolve the equation neatly, he isn't convinced that the UFC will follow such an obvious path. There's a delicate balance at play between spectacle and authenticity, between honoring the gravitas of the location and maintaining the integrity of the sport. The promotion has the chance to blend patriotism with competition, to craft a narrative that resonates globally while still letting the fights themselves dictate the drama. Yet Sonnen's insight reminds us that these choices are rarely straightforward. The UFC must weigh national pride against star power, fan expectation, and stylistic matchups, all under the intense glare of worldwide scrutiny. And in doing so, the decision about who steps into the main event becomes far more than a simple logistical call. It becomes a reflection of how the organization envisions the intersection of politics, culture, and the spectacle of combat sports itself.
Like when I get asked the question, who has to fight on the White House card? I say, wait. In what realm are we talking? Like who is just the most American? Because I gotta just tell you, historically, it really doesn't play out that way. It really doesn't. Right? I mean, you got the four big ones. You got UFC 100, 200, 300, and Sphere. Those are the big ones. And there was no emphasis put on the fact that an American goes out on top. It just wasn't. So, this is different, though. This is different. You're on the White House lawn. You could make sure an American goes out on top without rigging the deck. You could just put two Americans against each other in the main event. The problem solved. But I don't know that that's likely to happen. Right?
And then Henry Cejudo steps in to sketch out some of the potential matchups that could define the card, tossing out possibilities like Ilia Topuria facing Islam Makhachev or Justin Gaethje clashing with Arman Tsarukyan. But when the focus narrows to the main event, Cejudo's attention sharpens toward a truly explosive spectacle, a blockbuster showdown between Alex Pereira and John Jones. He points out that the UFC's priorities have shifted increasingly toward entertainment, toward fights that don't just decide a belt but dominate headlines, drive pay-per-view numbers, and capture the imagination of fans worldwide. Cejudo doesn't mince words about the stakes for Jones, hinting that the champ had better be ready because if this particular pairing comes to fruition, it won't be just another main event, it will be the fight that dominates conversation, social media, and every sports highlight reel for weeks. The potential for drama, power, and legacy-defining moments is off the charts, and in a world where the UFC is ever more attuned to spectacle and headline value, a Pereira-Jones clash could transform the entire card into an unforgettable night that fans will be dissecting long after the final bell rings.
That's all right. I think they're gonna do Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev, and then I think they might do Justin Gaethje versus Arman, and then that's what's kind of, or unless it did McGregor, against Islam Makhachev. That's the only thing, the scenario that I can think of. But I mean, if these guys don't understand, like, dude, the Paramount has really changed a lot of things and it's becoming more entertainment. Who could sell?
Yeah. Do you think? Well, let's just ask you now. Dana White's getting the announcements are coming this week. What's your prediction for the main event of UFC White House?
Yeah, fuck. Yeah, they're just gonna move everything around. So I think it would make sense. I'm gonna have to say the main event is probably gonna be Pereira Jones. And I hope Jones.
So, can you even imagine it? Could McGregor really strut onto the White House card? Or is this just another illusion feeding our anticipation? The tension is already thick, and every second your mind races with the possibilities. Share your theories in the comments, spill the doubts, the wild predictions, because everyone's watching, everyone's guessing. And don't let this moment slip past. You need to hit that subscribe button, lock it in, or risk being left in the dark when the next twist drops, unraveling everything you thought you knew about the fight that might or might not happen.